啊，记者！快点，快点，快走，快走，快走！
公平自由，结社自由，结社自由，开放放弃，开放放弃。
What do you remember of the day when you went in front of Premier Li in Beijing during the Tiananmen protests?
What do I remember of that? Well, it is certainly one of the more memorable day of the movement. It is certainly very memorable for most Chinese, as they probably first time in their life witnessing a ordinary Chinese citizen, or maybe even a kid, a young citizen, young gentleman, sit down in a fashion of equal with the super leader, and even gave him a lesson. So that is something most Chinese people, not only they didn't get used to it, they probably never seen it before, that a citizen can do that. That is something what we really wanted in the movement. The key spirit of the movement is democracy. I mean, we want people to be equal with the government. We are no longer just a subject. We want to earn the right to be a citizen, meaning we are equal with those who are on the top, who think they are the rulers, then we are the subjects. We want to let them stop thinking like that, start to treat us like equal by doing it ourselves. And then, so like any other mass movement, the logic of Tiananmen protest is that we apply tremendous pressure to the government by taking the street, mass demonstration, striking the class, and eventually lead to hunger strike. So we apply huge pressure to our opponent, and in this case it's the government. And then we want the government to have dialogue with us. Dialogue means talk to each other, but basically in an equal partnership. So we wanted dialogue in 1989. So on the fourth day of the hunger strike, I was summoned to go to the Great Hall of People to meet with Chinese Premier. The Premier is the head of the government. We want to have this dialogue with the government. So this could be it. This could be what we want coming to reality. Of course, I was very excited, strong anticipation, but also anxiety. Worry about, we don't know what is this going to be a dialogue, or which direction it's going to lead to. I walked in, I was being the head of the delegation. We walked into the hall, we sat down, and then Premier Peng started to give us a long monologue, long lecture, by starting to say, I'm 20 minutes late. That's because the whole city of Beijing is in chaos. He's blaming us, blaming the students, making the city traffic condition impossible for him to be on site on time. It's a smart strategy, trying to blame us first. So when he said that I was being the first student to respond, I said, well, Mr. Premier, I would like to respond to you first by correcting you. You are not 20 minutes late. You're 1 month late. We called and asked you to come out to talk to us 1 month ago when we took part in the Mr. Hu Yaobang, General Secretary Hu Yaobang's funeral. We called your name. We said, come out and talk to us. 1 month later, you are here, after we started hunger strike, and you blaming us. And then you say you want to discuss one thing, that is how to end the hunger strike. Well, that's exactly what I want too. Nobody wants to hunger strike to die. We initiated hunger strike so we can have this dialogue, when we can have this frank communication. And then let me tell you what is a frank communication is aiming for, what we want. We want the government to sit down in an equal term with the students, start to recognize the students came to the street, to Tiananmen Square, with the motivation for the country. We were rational, we were patriotic. You need to at least to recognize those first, so we can probably sit down in an equal and a mutual respectful way. And that's the first step to stop the hunger strike. Since we are both in the same goal to stop the hunger strike, let me tell you how we can stop the hunger strike, so we can talk directly into that topic. And I think Li Peng, being a senior Chinese leader, Chinese Communist regime leader, has never really got into an opportunity accustomed to be lectured by one of their citizens, subjects, let alone a 21 years old. So he was very agitated, and he started to repeat himself. He lost his logic, his speech management. So it started to look really bad for him.
After that speech,
Dialogue.
Kind of dialogue, what did happen?
I was on my 4th day of hunger strike. I was in a very weak physical condition. I'm having a heart condition at that time, and the dialogue didn't go through at all as we had expected. It was a rather confrontational, heated debate. But I laid on our card clearly: do that, have that conversation with us, or we will be here continuing our hunger strike until the government, one day government decide to sit down with us. So that dialogue ended in such a rush situation. And then in that evening, Li Peng announced martial law. So basically that conversation he had with us, with me, was not really a dialogue, was not government sitting down with the student. It is lecturing, and then also to show, because it was live broadcasted by CCTV, the biggest Chinese television station, to Chinese people. So that was to tell the Chinese citizen that the government have done every bit. So what's following is inevitable. The following is martial law, is bringing the fully armed, with real ammunition, military force to enforce the martial law. If necessary, cracking down. Eventually that did happen. So they're establishing a contact to say, we came to talk to the students, but it is them being unreasonable, so we have to bring in our troops to end the situation. So you can clearly say that the Chinese regime had no intention to sit down with the students. So our goal, to have this dialogue between the government and the students, and then on behalf of Chinese people, was never reached in 1989. All because of Chinese regime. They played really bad in their hand. We gave them every opportunity, but then they just decided they don't want to have that dialogue with Chinese, with their subjects, with their people. As their rulers, they just want us to follow their orders.
And after you went to Hong Kong and France and US and Taiwan, how has been your life as a persecuted dissident? What name, what word do you prefer to define?
I'm an exile. I'm an exiled Chinese dissident. I'm persecuted dissident, a protester, peaceful protester, organizer of one of the largest, but at the same time, one of the most peaceful demonstration in human history. Very proud, but the bloody result is something is going to haunt me for the rest of my life. I have to live with the guilt, being a survivor. And like you said, after the massacre, I had to escape from China. I lived in Europe, I lived in France, and then I lived in the United States. Eventually I find my way to Taiwan, where I have been living here for more than 25 years now. Longer than the time that I lived in China. So Taiwan is my adopted home. One interesting part is that we are democracy activists. We even call ourselves, we're proud to take the name as freedom fighter. And then we have been deprived of our freedom to live in our own country, but we were tossed into some of the most free places in the world. France, US, Taiwan. To understand freedom better, I guess, to understand democracy better, especially here in Taiwan. We all know that Taiwan is one of the most democratic country in Asia. For a long time, I said, when I travel around the world, I say Taiwan is the beacon of democracy in Asia. Then I changed my tone a little in the last 10 years. Taiwan is no longer just a beacon of democracy in Asia. Taiwan is an exemplary democracy in the world today. So it was extremely fortunate for me to live my exile lives in countries like France, in US, in Taiwan.
Why is the most wonderful democracy in the world, in the planet?
Well, to put it in one simple way, this democracy we're living in here in Taiwan, we earned it. It wasn't handed down to us by General MacArthur, or was the one after World War II to enforce Italian general. There's another American general, German, British, whoever, make sure that Germany, Italy to become what they think the world should become. Now, here in Taiwan, although we are on the winning camp of the World War II, but after that, Taiwan was still underdeveloped politically. But at the same time, Taiwanese people never stopped fighting for the freedom. Not just freedom from under the military attack of fascism, but also downright to citizens' freedom, equal democracy, rule of law, real democracy. We never stopped fighting for that. And then I can tell you today, here in Taiwan, everybody knows we breathe in and out freedom. It's like air, okay? It's like oxygen. You won't really feel it when you're just being granted a surrounding that where you can breathe in. But you will immediately feel the lack of it when you are stroked. Freedom and democracy is like that. You feel it more needed when you are being deprived of your freedom and your democracy and your rights.
And now, what do you think about the relation between Chinese regime and Taiwan? Because we know, we read every day the news about intimidation. So we are very worried in Europe.
Thank you.
We are very worried about Taiwan,
Yes.
for Taiwan destiny.
Well, first of all, Taiwan has been living under military threat in the last 70 years by the same party, Chinese Communist regime. The reason they didn't move in is because the world sent a strong message to Beijing that it will not be tolerated. The world sent in the strong message by intervening North Koreans' invasion to the south, and maybe even a little bit was United Nations intervention when Iraq invaded Kuwait. So after World War II, the world decided to step into this new world order under the leadership of United States. I think it's fair to say that the world will embrace a common value. The Declaration of Human Rights was announced in 1948, and then the United Nations was formed at the same time. So to prevent World War III. So that was the idea, led by US. We're going to work together under this globalism, or called United Nations, and then we're going to hold on to one principle, human rights, to prevent World War III. But to prevent World War III, you really need to respect the borderline of each country. If you invade, if you cross that borderline, that's a red line. We're going to come back to you with everything we got. That's what happened in Korea. But that has created a problem. That sent a message to the dictators within those borderlines. Do not come out of that borderline, invade any other country. Anything else you do within your own country, by all means, go ahead. Chinese know they can get away from what they have done to Tibetans. And Burmese junta know what they can get away with what they have done to Rohingya. And the kind of message keep repeating. The Chinese Communist regime, Xi Jinping today says, I can probably get away with anything I do to Uyghur. So the world sending such message to dictators have become their accomplice in their invasions. Well, the reason the Chinese regime has not yet invaded Taiwan is because the message is strong. We will stand by Taiwanese. The world's message. The reason the world sent a strong message to Beijing is because Taiwan has earned it. We earned our democracy. We earned our free marketing economy. We earned our respect in the world when we actively participated in the international cooperation. And we earned that right when we respect the rights of our own citizens, regardless of their ethnicity, their background. There's sex gender, like Taiwan being the first country in Asia to welcome same-sex marriage. That tells you that. So we have earned the world's respect. With that respect, the world have been sending strong message to Beijing. If you dare to move an inch toward invasion of Taiwan, we will be standing shoulder by shoulder with Taiwanese. And then in the last 2-3 years, the world have demonstrated that they can stand shoulder by shoulder with Ukrainian. Do we want to see what happened in Beijing, in Tiananmen again? I'm sure most Italians were not in Tiananmen, but you probably watched it in your living room. You don't want to watch that again in your living room to see another Tiananmen. Do you want to see what happened in Ukraine one more time in your living room, but to a country probably closer to you in Europe? So if you don't, a good lesson we can learn from the history, from the past, send that message to Beijing as loud as possible, as clear as possible. With a clear and loud message to Beijing, the invasion to Taiwan can be prevented. And with an ambiguous message, unclear, and hesitate to say, well, we won't like it, but we probably will only give you economic sanction if you invade Taiwan. And we'll probably try to solve that problem in real global diplomacy or something like that. That basically is telling Beijing, go ahead and do it. We will not stand by Taiwanese. We will not join the fight.
I would like to talk about the Uyghur situation because you were born in a Uyghur family, is it correct?
Yes.
Which is your story as a Uyghur person, human being, in China and after?
I'm a Uyghur born in Beijing. My parents, they were born in Uyghur land, and then they came to Beijing in the early 50s, right after the founding of the People's Republic. They were recruited to work as official document translators and official book publisher for official document publisher, because Xinjiang at that time has been incorporated, has been annexed by People's Republic of China and it's been given a fancy name, autonomous region of Uyghur people. So all the official documents, even the renminbi, the Chinese money, has to have Uyghur something written on the Uyghur language, Tibetan, Mongolian as well. So my parents was recruited to do that. So they came to Beijing in the 50s. I was born in Beijing in an Uyghur family. I was born in Beijing as a Uyghur to a society where it's full of Chinese, and the discrimination against a smaller number ethnic group is everywhere. There is no one day there hasn't been one day I don't feel being discriminated when I grew up. So my story, being a Uyghur born in Beijing and grew up in Beijing, is probably a little unique in compared to most Uyghurs who were born in where they call Xinjiang. Most Uyghur people don't like the name Xinjiang. We call our land East Turkestan or Uyghur land. Some probably prefer Uyghurstan. Xinjiang is Chinese name. Xinjiang means new frontier. So for that reason, I didn't mind using the same Xinjiang for many years. I said, well, it's evidential. The Chinese government using the name Xinjiang to acknowledge that our land was never really like what they have claimed part of China forever. It's a new frontier. It's evidential that we were never part of China. Even their name reveals that secret. That being said, being an Uyghur person, grew up in Beijing, you feel discriminated every day, no matter what the name is, what did it mean, no matter what language you speak, what kind of collective memory you have, national identity you feel. So being Uyghur basically means you're a secondary citizen under the Chinese communist regime. So like you said, the Italian people perhaps don't really know much about what's happening far, far away, almost across the globe. So to help you understand, imagine you are secondary, being labeled as secondary, maybe Jewish, during Mussolini time. That will probably help you understand how it is to be a Uyghur. Also, historically, Uyghur people were a mighty ethnic group in the Euro-Asian continent. For a long time, we were the conqueror of Central Asia, Euro-Asia land. We built one of the largest military forces, one of the largest khanate one of the largest military forces, later on known as the Han, who reached all the way to Central Europe, even built a country called Hungary. The Chinese built a great wall to resist us. So Uyghur people have a very rich history of a strong ethnic group. We were conquerors, and we have been in the center of so many conflicts in this Euro-Asia continent. Most of the time we were the winner side. We were the conqueror. So there is a built-in character to all Uyghur people that we stand tall and strong when we face any oppression. That's also my case when I was a little Uyghur grow up in Beijing, being discriminated every day. Through our own history, I guess the one important lesson we have learned as Uyghur is that when there is an oppression, standing up and tall and fight back is the only answer. It's the only valid way to solve the issue. So that is also how I was brought up, being a Uyghur. My parents, my grandparents would always say, don't take what was presented to you. If you are being bullied, you fight back. If your friends, your family, your siblings being bullied, you lend a hand. You fight back together. So that kind of character was built into me as a young Uyghur. I think it had probably have something to do with how I became one of the founder and leader of the 1989 student movement. We never took our fate as it was presented. We fought back. And then that is still the case today for Uyghur people. In Xinjiang, I just explained what the name means, but that's the biggest Chinese provincial level area. The Chinese Communist Party actually occupies and rule. In Xinjiang, they have the almighty military presence that they use to successfully presented their occupation, and of course with the almighty political presence, economical. In every aspect, the Chinese feel that they are on upper hand, that we are on the lower hand, second-class people, but we never really felt being submissive. We never surrendered ourselves. I think that's the key reason they implemented the concentration camp. They want to break our spine. We are about 100 kilometers away from the Caucasus Mountain, so we are Caucasian. And that is one of the reasons the Chinese Communist Party didn't like the most. We have a very pale skin, bigger nose, and all these have led to, one way to another, led to the decision of throwing us all in a concentration camp.
There is a kind of racism against
Racism? Absolutely. Yes, the Uyghur cleansing is definitely a racist act by Chinese Communist regime. After many decades of efforts of trying to break our spirit, they decide to come to the final solution, concentration camp and genocide.
Is there any chance or possibility to stop this kind of aggression of Chinese regime now against Uyghur, Tibetan, and Taiwan?
Yes, of course. One thing I think I know about my long time opponent, the Chinese Communist regime, is that pressure always works. You apply pressure as powerful, as strong as possible. Talk to them in loudest voice, with clearest message, and with a mighty force behind your message. That's one way, I think, if it is not the only way, that you can get your message across, not get your message heard. It is one way, for sure.
You still are a non-violent person, so you believe in non-violent movement?
I do.
Movement.
Yes, but let's also, first of all, understand our opponent, the Chinese Communist regime. I hope that our audiences never really been through this experiences of facing a bully, but we probably have seen one or two in our lives. Growing up in a schoolyard, in a playground, there will always be a bully picking up somebody smaller and using their forces to get their will done. I did when I was in elementary school. I was being picked by a bully all the time. And then there's this one time I think my grandma's thought kicked in my mind and said, don't stand for what you are presented, you stand up against it. So I was being bullied by this big tall guy, classmates. And then I think I, out of nature or something, I throwed my fist, I punched back at his nose. And he started to bleed, but more funnily, he started to cry. He crawled into a corner and started crying. And then I realized that's what a bully is. That's what a bully does. And then so when you're being bullied, throw your fist back on his nose where it really hurts. So to stop Chinese regime doing what they want to do to Tibetan, to Uyghur, to peaceful demonstrators in their own country, in their own city, in Tiananmen Square, Hong Kong, throw your punch back on the face, kick them where it hurts, and then do that at the same time. Send that message as clear and as loud as possible. More is coming if you do not fall into this world order. So that's how you get the Chinese Communist regime to respond to your demand.
That means not a conflict, military conflict or...
No, I mean, nobody promotes military conflicts in the 21st century. Certainly not this democracy activist, not this freedom fighters. But I do promote stand strong and tall against any military threat with military force backing yourself up. Since the bullies only understand the language of bully, and then their bully is based on their military threats, show them what you can do with your military force, power, and then ask them to listen. Really, it's not that more complicated than a lesson a 10 years old can learn in a schoolyard when facing a bully.
What do you hope for your future and the future of your son and your family, and what do you hope and dream?
As I told you, I'm an exile. Exile means one person who have been deprived his right to go home. And I can tell you this, all exiles in the world, maybe someone like me from Tiananmen Square, maybe someone like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, or hundreds of thousands of Tibetans that followed him and are now living in exile in India or around the globe. All of us, there's one dream that is in common in all the exiles. Go home with dignity and with the rights we deserve. That's what I want for myself, to go home one day, maybe even to continue what we wanted in 1989, to have that dialogue, and of course to see my parents. I haven't seen them for 35 years now, and to hold my mother, to kiss her and beg for her forgiveness, and then to hope for something like that never happens to anybody else, certainly not to my son, and to create a world where exile is no longer a phenomenon for hundreds of thousands of people. I hope one day His Holiness the Dalai Lama can go back to Tibet to be greeted by his people, his beloved Tibetan people, and that we can sit down and have that dialogue we wanted in 1989 about freedom, dignity, rights, and how do we achieve it in a peaceful manner.
20岁